Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the base focused on Black Twitter, Black content, and Black ownership. I'm going to wait for a few more people to join us, and then we're going to jump right into the conversation. I have a very distinguished guest with me tonight, rather, founder of Fanbase app, very well respected brother in the tech industry, Isaac Hayes III. How you doing, brother?
What's happening? What's up?
A whole lot's going on, as you can tell. We all know the conversation is floating around Twitter and then by default Black Twitter and the power of public opinion in public social media spaces. So I just wanted to have somebody who's very well connected so we can chop it up with people and just have a real conversation about where things are going to be going and where they should be going.
And where you at too? You at a party? Where you at?
I knew somebody was going to say that. No, I'm actually at a hotel. I'm here for a meeting and I couldn't get away from it, so I decided to come down to the bar and get something. So I'll be muting myself as much as possible. I hope it's not too loud.
Oh, it's loud. sound like you at a basketball game. That's all good though. It's funny. It's cool.
Yeah, it's all good. I actually got a glass of wine with me, nice glass of red. Did I say bottle? No, I mean glass of red. So I'm gonna be on my best behavior tonight. I'm gonna keep it together.
Cool, cool. I'm trying to figure out, is there a way to tweet this room? Let's see.
Yeah. Um, if you go up to the in the three dots at the top of your app, there
Uh-huh.
should be a space where it says share via DM or share via tweet. And if you do either one, that'll bring people in. If you want to tweet it, hit share via tweet.
Okay, I see. I see like all the little. I hate that little app thing. I copied the link though, but um, let me. Yeah, I'm gonna share it like this though. I know.
All right, cool. And yeah, if you can share it as much as you can, because I invited some heavy hitters in the social media space along with yourself to come in too. So the more people see it, the better it'll be.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Not a problem.
Well, while we're waiting for a few more people to join in, a little bit about what you got going on, brother. I'm a big fan of yours. I'm a big fan of your social media app. So let's tell people a little bit about what you've done.
So I founded a tech startup called Fanbase. It is the first social media platform that allowed a user to subscribe to a user using in-app purchase functionality. So fingerprint, Face ID. There have been other platforms that have existed for a while, like Patreon and OnlyFans. Um, and so I wanted to provide and create an opportunity that kind of remove that friction and allow people to you know, create businesses, monetize content, communicate, socialize, but still with the optionality, the free optionality to just have a regular social media experience. But if they wanted to monetize their content beyond that, they could. And how the world has changed in the last 2 years. Um, Everybody wants to do this now, which I think is great. But I kind of pride myself on being the first to really kind of do that technology.
Okay, and that ties into what we're going to be talking about tonight. I think we've got enough people in so we can just get started. All right, so the baseline of today's conversation, or tonight's conversation, the title is called Exodus, Movement of Black Twitter. And those of y'all who are into reggae, I cribbed that title from Bob Marley's song Exodus, Movement of Jah People, because depending on how things may be going in the next week or so, we may have a Twitter, we may not. We Black Twitter, we may not. And I think regardless of whether we do or not, I think it's time, well, it's really long overdue to have the conversation about the power of social media to drive conversations, to build and break careers, and to also create resources for people who may be marginalized. So I just wanted to throw that out to you, Isaac. What have you seen? What do you think is going to be happening in the next couple of weeks? And can you talk a little bit about the power of, I don't want to stick it just directly on Black Twitter, but about the power of Black social media and Black public opinion in that space?
Yeah. So I I think it's kind of it's kind of confusing what's going on with Twitter, and I think Elon, I think maybe underestimated how people respond to his demands. I don't think he came in with leadership. I think he kind of came in with authoritarianism. And people, we in a like, I don't need this job kind of like, situation. So a lot of the people like left. I was reading tweets about how he locked the building down, and then like a lot of people just resigned. So I think he's in a tough position because now he owns, but he doesn't have anybody to run it. So he's gonna have to find people to run Twitter and keep it going. So that's one problem, which leaves a lot of people that have invested a lot of years and content and energy into building profiles and all that kind of stuff, kind of hanging in the balance. So that's unfortunate because you know, Twitter is a very necessary function of our society, in a multitude of ways. So I think it's unfortunate the way that this has all gone down. Um, with regards to Black culture, I always say that Black culture is the economic engine of social media. It's what generates the way that platforms are monetized. And what I mean by that, I use TikTok maybe as probably the most current example. So when you look at the wide like range of users on TikTok, it's still primarily in the United States a white app used by a lot of white people. And so since advertising is at the core of their business model, this is just business. It would behoove TikTok to run ads that appeal to the masses, all races, including white people. So it is better for business for TikTok to have very, very famous white creators on their platform. The problem is, how do they get famous? How do they become popular? Well, they get their content from young Black creators, the ideas, the music, the slang, the choreography. So what happens is, and I don't have a problem, and I say this all the time. I think um, the way that TikTok is designed, it's designed in a way that we all are supposed to mimic and copy each other. You do the challenge, I do the challenge. You do the dance, I do the dance. The problem is the way that the platforms utilize the invention of one creator to highlight the value prop of another creator to make them famous because they're white and they get 100 million views on their video, and they have a lot more IP to run or a lot more content to run ads through and make more revenue. So um, we have to find better ways to have an equitable kind of environment, because a lot of these kids are putting their heart and soul and energy into creating this content, and then they get burnt out, and it's really unfortunate. So that's really one of the main reason why I created Fanbase, because of a creator that um, went viral and didn't know how to really make any money right at the moment it was happening. So, but we give our dances to TikTok, our clapbacks to Twitter, our skits to Instagram. We give our culture to all of these platforms, but we don't own the infrastructure of the platforms that give us some sense of protection from um, this predatory kind of exploitive relationship between social media platforms and then the Black community. So that's where we are now. We're at a crossroads where we have a decision or an opportunity to actually capitalize from the moment going on right now to build our own infrastructure and then utilize it for everybody. So, because people have asked about fan base building Black Twitter, and I put a poll up over here on Twitter and asked people, should we build Twitter functionality in the fan base? And overwhelmingly, I think it was like 93%, 92% people say yes. So that conversation is being had, and I think it will happen. I just don't know in what kind of way it will happen. But I think what's important about that is that we have to start owning these infrastructures of these amazing platforms that we kind of create. So there's got to be a change, and now's the time to take a chance to take an opportunity of doing that.
Exactly, and that's why I really wanted to have you on this space to have that conversation. it kind of seems like, the things we're talking about, the things you just described, it's sort of like a pattern that you see when it comes to black creativity in America. If you go all the way back, to the jazz era, if you go all the way back to like the even the early hip hop era, even though that was when it began to change, there was always this groundswell of black creativity where you had people who were creating things on the ground or creating new art forms. And then the people who would come in and take advantage of it and were able to monetize off of it were people from outside the community who didn't necessarily have the community's understanding or the best interest at heart. Because one of the best at like the old movie Cadillac Records, when you had like descriptions of Etta James and Muddy Waters, they were creating the blues or they were doing the electric blues, but it was being exploited by people who were giving them a Cadillac and a suit of clothes and they want to send them about their way. And it seems like in a lot of social media instances, somebody goes viral and they either don't know how to capitalize off of it or their information or their genius gets taken away from them. Like the girl, I think the first instance of that was the young girl who created the phrase on fleek and then she didn't copyright it, and then you saw it showing up in like vegan farms and stuff like that, and a lot of people started running with that. So let me ask you, how can a creative who wants to be able to monetize off the work that they do, or maybe a dance that they do, or something that they create that automatically pops up, how can they do that if they don't know the procedure to make that happen?
Well, let me add on to what you were talking about black creativity. What I say is black is the cool of the world, right? And what I mean by that is we are the apex of innovation, and African culture for sure is an innovation and an exceptional culture. But what I really focus on, and I tell people all the time, is like African American culture, and this is sometimes where there's a little bit of a divide. And I like ancestry is one thing, but but culture is another. And black African American culture is a 600-year-old culture. It's the smallest and youngest culture group on earth, but it's the most influential. It is the hottest shit in the universe. It is like the most valuable, you know, thing that exists. And by that is we innovate everything. Like if you want it, I don't care if it's the cotton gin, I don't care if it's the traffic light, I don't care if it's an alarm system. I don't care if it's heart surgery. Like we innovate every single thing. We innovate. We're so innovative that we don't realize that we're building actual industries from our innovations, infrastructures. And I'll use hip hop and the culture primarily as the main example. I had an opportunity to talk to Grandmaster Flash like about a month ago, and every time I have the conversation about owning infrastructure, I tell this story. I say that the moment that Flash DJ'd on two turntables and a mixer, someone should have pulled him to the side and said, "Do not show a living soul what you just showed me. Let's go figure out how to make turntables and mixers, because everyone that's going to do this is going to need turntables and mixers." Right? Fast forward to 2022, DJ culture is owned by Pioneer, Techniques, Serato, right? To the point that the two turntables and a mixer that we put together are now one piece of hardware and software. So it's literally our invention that they built into hardware. So everybody should be DJing on the Flash 5000 right now, and Grandmaster Flash should be worth about $7 billion. Just chilling, being this like old dude that's the ambassador and the inventor of hip hop, and I use like automobile culture where we innovate. We put TV rests and rims and LED lights in the ceilings and all this cool stuff. And then every luxury vehicle you can think, I don't care if it's a Maybach, I don't care if it's a Bentley, a Rolls Royce. They have all of the things that came from African American culture, but we don't own Ford, Chrysler, you know, Mercedes. We don't own any car companies. So social media is the exact same position that we're in now. We've innovated social media, but do we own any platforms? So Fanbase is a black founded platform. It's black owned. It's owned by many races because I've done equity crowdfunding to fund the platform, but it's majority owned by African American ownership, which is myself and the other investors that are involved that have invested in Fanbase. And we've been quite successful in raising capital and in a climate where it's hard to raise capital. But um, I think for creators, it is important that you start charging for your content the moment that you create it. And this is a direct difference between white and black. And what I mean is, the moment that someone white creates something, they put a value on it and they sell it. We are so used to giving things away for free and then turning around and asking to be paid afterward. I would say social media is in the same position that hip hop was, like from like 2009 to 2012, like the mixtape era, right? Where you give away 40 songs and one catches and you get a record deal, but you gave away 40, all the publishing and masters that you threw into the fire to get this one record, right? It's the same way with social media. You do, a bunch of dances, a bunch of skits, a bunch of all these, amazing things just to go viral once. And now you have to turn this viral moment into a career, which is the most inefficient thing in the world. So when I first started um, searching about, I noticed a stark difference between black people and white people, and mainly platforms like Patreon, which is a predominantly white use platform. We'll go in there and see podcasters. Now, mind you, everybody got a podcast. I'm not trying to. I've seen so many black podcasts. Like, it's great. Everybody's doing podcasts, but everybody's just doing podcasts, making YouTube clips, putting them up on Instagram, and trying to get famous. Right. Meanwhile, there are podcasters that you've never heard of that are making 120,000 a month, 80,000 a month, $160,000 a month, and you've never heard of them. That is because the moment that they started their podcast, they put it behind a paywall. They gave the audio away for free, but the extra content, the bonus content, the video stuff, they put it in a position to be monetized. And I use Tim Dillon, this comedian Tim Dillon, as an example. And he's a comedian, but he has a podcast. And Tim Dillon's one of the most famous creators on Patreon. Tim Dillon's making like 230 a month. Like, he's making over $2.4 million a year. And you probably walk past him on the street and never see the guy before. And wouldn't know who he was. And what I tell anybody is, think of it like, if I were to start a bakery today and I had to give away muffins for free to every single person until somebody famous came up and ate a muffin and was like, these are the best muffins ever. You got to go there right now and get muffins, and then everybody runs and gets muffins. I wouldn't be in business very long. I wouldn't be able to sustain that. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't be able to sustain that free food before I run out of money and my business closes. And that is the same way that I feel about content. And so we have to change the narrative of the freemium ideology that everything can be free. I can, like, fan base is free to download, free to use, but the optionality of having a user say, look, if I want to um, subscribe and support this person, I can. I'm not forced to do that. And that's the beauty of fan base is subscription is an optional functionality of the platform. There's also a freemium, there's also an aspect of the platform that allows you to show love to people. So you can like, which is like a thumbs up on fan base, but a love, which is a heart icon, something that someone does, you give them half a penny and you buy that love as virtual currency. And a lot of people are like, do people actually buy that love and give it? I'm like, absolutely. People are transactional. They want to support the people that they really like, and creatives and artists and people that they, appreciate the content that they make. So they absolutely do that. And so that is the model, the freemium model is where we're at now, where the world is going to change very, very quickly with subscriptions. And I say this all the time, like, if you're not monetizing your content today, 5 years from now, you're going to regret that you didn't start today, because you're going to be out earned by someone that is less talented than you are, that simply decided to do so. Do not, every single person in this room, every single person that you know, because we are all content creators. If you post one piece of content a day, on one piece of content a year, or 100 posts a day, they're running ads in between all of that anyway. So you have to put yourself in the position to monetize. Um, everybody is not going to be your fan, right? Everybody has a fan base, but 95% of the people that follow you passively, like a magazine at a grocery store, or they're nosy or they're haters. But that 5%, those are the people that will subscribe, will support you, and you can turn that 5% into a sustainable business that will actually pay you more than most, Fortune 500 jobs that you could have.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that because that's a very real thing, and I think a lot of people, especially a lot of our people, get caught up in the idea that you're on the high of creating content, pulling in a lot of likes, you're pulling in a lot of retweets or whatever platform you're using, and we don't think about it from a business standpoint. While everybody else, just to recap what you said, everybody else is looking at what you're doing from a business standpoint. Well, let me ask you, how can we move people who are content creators into thinking like business people and thinking about the value of what they do?
Um, I mean, honestly, it's just going to have to be. You're going to have to learn, right? So I'll give you a prime example. If anybody's familiar with Bad Baby, um, the girl Catch Me Outside, she was on Dr. Phil. She's a rap artist. She became, famous for that, and then she got a record deal as a rapper on Atlantic Records and started putting out music. And she amassed about 16 million Instagram followers. And I saw maybe this is probably like about a year ago, maybe less than a year ago, probably like 8, 9 months ago. She posted a video about how she made $53 million on OnlyFans in a year. And the first thing I did is I went and subscribed to her OnlyFans. And I understand that OnlyFans is sometimes pornographic or heavily pornographic, but I wanted to know how she made the money, how many people it took her to make that money, and the type of content she posted. Number one, it was mostly photos of her in bikinis and lingerie, no nudity, nothing sexual. It was 160 pieces of content. It was videos that were no longer than 10 seconds, and she netted $42 million. She netted 16 million from subscriptions, and about 20 something. I think it's like 26 million from like tips, basically like our version of love. But I went to her Instagram and she had no content on Instagram. 16 million followers. She archived all her posts and she had a link.
Hey,
So
Isaac, you're breaking up a little bit. For a second, you're breaking up
oh,
just a little bit.
really? Hold on. Let me make sure. Hold on. Give me a second. Oh, hold on.
Take your
Let me
time.
let me go Wi-Fi. Let me go. Let me hop on this Wi-Fi real quick and see if that.
All, all good. And everybody, I see your requests in the comments and everything. Once we get through a few more questions, I'm going to open it up for other people to raise their hand. So, if you have anything you want to say or you have a question, raise your hand. I'm actually sitting up here in a bar with a list. So, pop your hand up, put it up. I'll bring you in and we can ask questions while we're waiting for
Okay.
Isaac to come through.
You
Yeah, I hear you now. You're loud and clear.
okay? You can hear me? Let's make sure.
Yes, sir. Loud and clear. Yes, sir. We can hear you loud and clear.
Somebody now. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Hello.
How about now?
If y'all can hear me, somebody. If you guys can hear me, send the emojis up. Okay, you can hear me. All
Yes,
right,
sir. I
cool.
can hear you.
All right, bet. So with Bad Baby, she posted a link. She archived all her content and posted a link tree, and um, the only thing that it led to was you can stream her music, watch her music video, or go to her OnlyFans. So she created a funnel. And a funnel is important because it gives the user no option other than to go exactly where you want them to go. And I expressed this about Instagram. This is one of the things that I learned and kind of pulled the veil back on Instagram, and why like Instagram is a platform that's really just takes advantage of every single person on the platform, because Instagram is in competition with every single person on the platform. And what I mean by that is I ask this simple question all the time: why would Instagram, right, um, let you reach 1 million people for free when they're about to charge Target or Walmart to reach 1 million people through ads? It doesn't make sense because if you could hit a button and immediately your content would be sent and put in front of a million people, then Walmart and Target would pay you to run ads on your page and not pay Instagram. So they suppress your content. Every single person on the platform, doesn't matter. You could go to the Rock's page. You can pull the Rock. Rock got 300 plus million followers. Go look at his videos. His videos will have 11 million views max, 20 million views max. They suppress that content down so that they can run ads and make money, and then you are encouraged to fight the algorithm, which feeds them more content to run more ads in between to make them more money. So it's like this carrot dangling in front of the rabbit on a treadmill, and you're running, 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 trying to, break the algorithm. And they're like, this is perfect. You keep posting reels, keep posting reels, keep posting videos after video, and you're just generating like billions of pieces of content for them to run ads in between, knowing that they're never going to give you that ability, because if they did, they wouldn't have an ad model to work on. And now that ad model is dying. And so you're seeing platforms like Instagram turn to subscriptions, Twitter Blue, what Elon was trying to do with Twitter Blue, Snapchat Plus, TikTok, and I just saw Clubhouse today is trying to figure out subscriptions as well. And I
Yep.
just laugh. I say it's a feather in our cap over a fan base, because we were literally the very first platform to allow a user to subscribe to another user via in-app purchase. Apple would not let us do what we wanted to do initially. Fortunately enough for me, I have a brilliant CTO that says that is a good thing. Whenever Apple tells you no or Google tells you no, just why they tell you no. And then if we can work around their limitation, we're about to do something that's never been done. And we did that. We worked around the limitation that they set, created a tier system that allows you to subscribe to one person, three people, or five people, and we're able to launch the app. But it was all in-app purchase technology, so just really, really quick. So that's what made kind of like that's to me that's what changed everything in the sense now, because now Instagram has subscriptions, and we went back to Apple and was like, how's Instagram able to do what we weren't able to do? And they were like, oh well, we've had a change of heart on the way we view subscriptions. I was like, really? Go figure. Yeah, because you told us no, and you see how much money's about to be made, and there's trillions of dollars that are about to be made um, in this game. And I tell people that the I think what should really two things. I thought Bad Baby would have tipped everybody off. I thought Bad Baby would have been like the one that had everybody going crazy. But even yesterday, and pay attention to the things that, like, when I heard that Taylor Swift put her tickets on sale and she sold 2 million tickets in less than an hour through Ticketmaster, where you have to pull out and enter your information and buy the ticket and wait, and she still broke the app and sold 2 million tickets in like record time. That let me know that, oh my God, imagine like someone going viral through subscriptions. Imagine Taylor Swift getting 7, 8, 9 million subscribers in an hour, 10 million subscribers in an hour, like going viral from subscriptions, right? And the revenue that's going to be generated. And so when you take someone like The Rock, right? The Rock has like 330 million followers, but about 5% of those people are 17 million people. If 17 million people were to subscribe to The Rock, let's say on Fanbase, he would make half a billion a year with a B. He would make over $500 million a year. So what that lets me know is The Rock will eventually be able to shoot his own movie. He'll be able to take that 500 million and say, "Oh, I'm gonna take 100 million to shoot my own movie and put it on Fanbase Plus, which is a component of Fanbase where you can put long form content up to 2 hours and put his own movie out. I don't have to go to Netflix. I don't have to go to Paramount. I can shoot my own content, because Fanbase Plus is just an app. Like it's an app like Disney Plus or Netflix and all that. It's just a component that we are easily going to Apple TV app and a Roku and a Fire Stick app. So now people will be able to take their content and put it up there and monetize it. So the middleman is gone. And what I talk about is there's 7.5 billion people on the planet with a smartphone. Research this. Just Google it. But there's only 222 million people that have Netflix, and there's only about 450 million people. I'm sorry, 525 million people that have music streaming services. So people subscribing to other people is going to be bigger than Spotify, Apple Music, Netflix, Disney Plus, and Hulu combined. The fact that you'll be able to subscribe to multiple people and create this content experience for yourself, so that I want to subscribe to Beyonce, Drake, and the Lakers. And for that, I get exclusive content from the two artists that I really love and my favorite sports team. And in return, the revenue that's generated from, these subscribers, the Lakers can send me courtside seats to a game. They can let me come to shoot around. They could, give me season tickets because I'm a fan base subscriber. Beyonce could fly me and nine of other her biggest fans out to a private show and dinner and put us all up in a hotel room because she's making so much money from subscriptions. And then what do you think happens when all these people go home and say, guess what I did? I met Beyonce and got to sit front row to her concert and and it all happened on this app called Fanbase. People are going to double back and subscribe. So I know that this is the future, that subscriptions are the future, and that ad revenue is going to be harder and harder. It's going to be harder for someone to build an app, get 10 million users on it, and then flip the advertising switch and turn it into a successful business. It's going to be harder and harder to do that. That's not going to be the way that we do it anymore.
Thank you for that. Thank you for giving everybody a free game because you just gave us $1 million worth of game with the genius you just gave us. I want to bring in one more speaker. I want to move from the business standpoint of that, and I'm gonna come back around for you, Isaac, because there's a question I want to ask you as well. Chuck Modi is a friend of mine, somebody I know from the independent media standpoint. He's a brother who I've known ever since the Ferguson uprisings, and I want to get his understanding on what the changes in Twitter mean for independent media, not just like independent like social justice media, but independent media as well, because we have to acknowledge the fact that a lot of the movements that we've seen over the past half decade have come directly from social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. So I want to get his opinion on that. Then again, Isaac, I want to circle around to what you were saying so we can have a better understanding. And again, if anybody, I see a lot of people have their hands up, please put your hand up, tap the mic on, and then put your hand up so I can see you, and we'll start taking questions from everybody. You have the floor. Brother, what's good with you? Chuck, can you hear me? Unmute your mic.
Yeah, the microphone down in the lower left-hand corner. If you tap that, you'll be
Okay, I
able to
think I
talk.
got it. Do you hear me?
Yes,
Yep,
sir.
there
Okay,
you go.
great. Hey,
Loud
listen,
and clear.
thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me the floor. I think the last time I saw you, it was in the streets of Ferguson, and we were talking at a Mike Brown August reunion, and I thought of Ferguson really when I think of Twitter. I think of Ferguson because that was an incredible moment of independent journalism. You had CNN, you had corporate media telling one story, telling a terrible story, criminalizing the protesters instead of the police, having people like the St. Louis Union chief Jeffrey Rorta on their program to explain the situation. For those who don't know, I'll just be quick about it. White supremacists will do is a good synonym for Jeffrey Rorta and other people. And you had one narrative going on. And then you had the reality that was going on of the uprising against the murder of Mike Brown and the police with the tear gas, with the militarization. And Twitter played a critical role. I think maybe the first time it was able to evade and change the entire narrative, and millions of people were going on Twitter to find out what really happened, what was really going on, what happens when you put a microphone in front of someone's face and say, hey, why are you out here today? What happened? So we got to see an entirely different story. And I remember there were some days that the protesters literally walked CNN in their car and said, and not just CNN, really all of them, and said, you have to go because you're actually putting us in danger. Your coverage is putting our lives in danger with the police. And I would argue maybe the only huge outlet that gave fair coverage day in day out was Al Jazeera when they were out there, and you weren't getting that. So that was the first thing I thought about in Twitter going away. And even before Twitter was going away, independent journalism is already in a crisis state. There is no left-wing corporate journalism. That doesn't exist. You're not going to go somewhere in corporate media and they're going to talk about things like Medicare for all. They're going to talk about things like reparations. They're going to talk about things like defunding police. You're not going to get that analysis. You're not going to get the critique about putting 100,000 police on the cop, which on the street, which Joe Biden really signed off on and both parties signed off on. You're not going to get that critique. So that doesn't exist in the left wing. And I'm just saying left wing across the board. I didn't even get into to black left wing. So that's the landscape before Twitter. And then you add Twitter, which is really just slightly putting a dent in that, giving some people another option because 90% of all media is consumed through corporate media. And now that tiny sliver is in danger. And I'm not sure of the way forward. I think that's part of this discussion, but I do believe that this is something of deep concern, and we will have to think about where does independent media go from here. And my particular lane is on the ground media, like original journalism, right? So how do we uplift the original journalists, which exist in every community but aren't always known? So that's my thinking. Those are my concerns. I don't have the answers, but I'm hoping discussions like this will lead to those answers.
Chuck, and I just want to let people know, for those who don't know, and you just raised that point, I can understand that six corporations, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken, own 98% of the media in the United
that's
States, if
right.
not the world. But I know in the United States, 98% of media that you consume, whether it's on social media and on TV, controlled by 6%, six corporations.
Yeah, and
So that
yeah,
leaves And so that leaves, like you said, a very small sliver of information to come through independent media, and Twitter and social media was the linchpin and the ground zero for people to get alternative media. That small amount was able to start moving the needle into mainstream media, because if you look at mainstream media today, if you spend 3 or 4 hours watching Sunday media on cable news, you can see the majority of the stories that they're pulling and some of the alternative points of view they're getting are coming directly from social media. So my question to you is, where do you see things going in the future, depending on, because things are shaky right now and there's no solid ground of what's going to happen in the future right now. We don't know. So what do you think may happen?
I you know what? I'm not very optimistic, and I know that that's not really what we want to put out in this stage. But the reason I'm not optimistic is I wasn't optimistic before this potential news of Twitter. I mean, I could tell you what I would like to see. I would like somehow independent journalists and a network somehow get together and reproduce, um, reproduce some kind of media conglomerate, and that's very, very difficult because we're talking about billion-dollar empires, right? We're talking about multi-billion-dollar empires, and what's going on the left wing, and well, I'll tell you, on a bunch of Patreon accounts. That's what's so like. We're throwing rocks, and they got tanks and armies from a media perspective. And how do you fight that? The only way I see that is fought is through some kind of conglomerate, some kind of getting together rather than just operating as individuals. And I am not sure the way forward, the way that works. So I don't have a good answer for you, but maybe just talking about it, other people may have a better answer.
All right, Chuck, thank you so much. I'm going to bring Isaac in real quick. Just hang on for a second if you can hang, and then I'm going to bring you in again. All right, Isaac, let me ask you this. How can we get the general public, because you mentioned Bad Baby and you mentioned The Rock, but the majority of people on social media who are building platforms are people who don't already have a audience. So how can we take the worst of the worst of the content that people are creating who don't already have built-in audiences and make that into something powerful that they can translate from not being on just one platform, that can move on over to something like fan base and make that move over into something where another platform where people can monetize what they're doing so they can have a livelihood.
Well, I tell people that try every platform, right? Don't. So I believe that we are in these um, relationships with social media similar to like like dating relationships, right? And that we are faithful to apps that don't, they take us for granted. They don't treat us well, but we stay, right? Um, and I tell people that they should date apps. Like, don't be faithful to Instagram or, I know you've been on the gram since 2015, and that's you done had this an 8-year relationship with it, and it's hard to let go and it's hard to leave because you done built community and following over there. But if it's not giving you the return or the satisfaction that you desire, then date something else. And two examples that I can use of that are DJ Khaled and Jason Derulo. If DJ Khaled would have remained faithful to MySpace or Instagram or Facebook, he would have never met Snapchat, which wound up being the love of his life and changed his life forever. He could have easily, stayed on Instagram, but I think that the connecting with the young people and trying something that nobody was on and doing something that nobody was doing with Snap changed his life. And then Jason Derulo was all but forgotten about as far as a musician and a recording artist, but he got on TikTok and now he's one of the most famous TikTokers on the platform and he makes tons of money. He's more famous now than he was before. And so we have to try other places. You cannot be fixed in solid. And a couple of reasons why. We really don't know. We really haven't seen the true lifespan of a social network, right? We know. I think MySpace, in comparison to what I call like social media, MySpace is dead. Facebook is a senior citizen. Instagram is a middle-aged adult. Snapchat is a millennial. TikTok is a centennial. And I built Fanbase to be the centennial generation alpha platform that anybody can use, but primarily it's for the next generation of users so that they're on the platform for 20 years. Nobody knows what Facebook's going to be in 2024. That's when it turns 20 years old. Nobody's going to know. Um, Twitter was in 2006, so no one by 2026 nobody's going to know what Twitter is. Twitter, in my opinion, before Elon, was the only immortal social network that existed for one very, clear reason, which is every other social network is defined by the generation that makes the platform relevant. It will live and it will die. It has a lifespan, right? Those kids get older, the platform becomes less relevant, and then a new platform emerges. Twitter is not defined by the generation that makes it relevant. Twitter is defined by what's happening right now. Who won the game? What did Kanye say? What is Trump doing? What is going on in Ferguson? Like, what is happening right now? It's such a real time necessity that I don't think people understand. It's the hip hop of social media. That's why hip hop is always going to be an immortal art form because something can happen in a record, something happen in real life, and it'll be in a song next week. That doesn't happen with regular pop records or R&B records or country records. They're not putting, Donald Trump's name in a record or Joe Biden's name in a record or, like Boosie just put out a song that gave a shout out to Takeoff, who
Yep.
passed like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I think we have to focus and utilize all the tools that are available, and Fanbase is just one of those tools that people can utilize.
That's actually really good because that's what brought me to Twitter in the first place. My background is in traditional media. I was writing for the Huffington Post, and I avoided social media for the longest time until I saw what was happening in Ferguson, and Chuck can tell you this. And the vibe that I got from Twitter at that time was kind of like what you said. It was like you could get minute to minute updates on what was going on, in St. Louis or in Baltimore, and it was kind of like that old school media that you have from like if you look at some of y'all may not know there was a newsman back in the 1920s and 30s named Walter Winchell, and what he did was he was really his beat was like the gangster beat, like whatever was going on with Al Capone, whatever was going on with like John Dillinger. He would jump on the radio and give you automatic updates of what was going on with Bonnie and Clyde and people like that. Twitter kind of has that same energy, it still has it, but nothing like that has really come across since. But we have to talk about what are we going to move to get that immediacy, depending on how things play out in the next month or so. So that's what I wanted to talk about. I want to open it up for some questions. Go ahead, Isaac. Did you have something to say?
Well, I mean, like I said, I think that we're going to build something. I can't say if it's going to be a direct addition to fan base, or something that's separate, but it's powered by fan base. I've been approached by some media companies to create something, because we're a Black founded tech startup and their media, and we need to start building infrastructure. We can't let we can't let opportunities like this go by, right? We really have to take control of our content, our culture, and then the infrastructures to do that. Important reason why, and I say this, is like in an ad revenue perspective, Facebook made 115 billion in ad revenue in 2021. Um, and we know that Black culture is the economic engine of social media. So $115 billion in profit. I I want, I want somebody to go up to Facebook and say, hey, look, we know that a large percentage of why you're able to make this ad revenue is because all these dances and all this music and all these skits and all these funny things that happen on your platform. Tell them to go put 5 billion in Baltimore or Chicago or Atlanta or Compton or Houston or any of these, communities that need, you know, should have the benefit of getting some of that. They'll laugh you out of the room. But platforms like Fanbase, that's exactly what the mechanism can be. It can be a mechanism to educate, empower, and give back to people, to the community that makes the platform relevant. If everybody, regardless of what Elon does, if everybody left Twitter tomorrow, Twitter would be worth $0.00. The power is in the people, right? Which is one of the reasons, and I'm going to plug the raise that we're doing for Fanbase. This is the I've done three raises on Fanbase. The first raise I raised 3.4 million. The second raise I raised 2.6 million, and I launched my final raise for Fanbase, that anybody can invest and actually own a part of Fanbase. We launched it a less than 2 months ago, about 7 weeks ago, and we've already raised over 1.5 million, and I'm stopping at 2.5 million. And the minimum to invest is $245 to actually have shares and sit on the cap table, like Orrin Michaels sat on the cap table of Uber as an accredited investor and put $5,000 into Uber in 2010. And when it IPO'd in 2019, his 5,000 was worth 24 million. But guess what? None of us got that phone call. None of us got that tip. You need to put some money down on Uber. Get 10 of your friends together, put $500 a piece, and 9 years later, your $500 is worth $2.4 million. They don't give you that game. So I'm giving that game because, like, I sarcastically say, suppose someone created a social media platform that you can monetize on the front end, but they allowed anybody to invest and have ownership in it, and then everybody went and got on that platform, and then the value of the platform skyrockets. It's the easiest legal flip of all time. It's crazy. It's like, oh, Fanbase was valued at 20 million when I started our first round. Our second round, it was valued at 50 million, and now this third round, Fanbase is valued at 85 million with over 300,000 users. But imagine if we had 2, 3, 4, 5 million users on the platform. It'd be $1 billion, $2 billion company, right? And so, but I tell everybody, before you download it, buy some stock in it, and then go over there and tell all your people to move over there, and then own part of it, so you can sit on that thing all day long. If you're gonna sit on Clubhouse or Twitter Spaces all day, argue and talk to people, at least have some in it, so that the content that you are generating by your conversation is still adding to the value of an asset that you own. Like, and we have to turn innovations into acquisitions. But that's the biggest thing, is like, innovating is good. It's great that we innovate jazz and hip hop and fashion, but we have to turn those into acquisitions that we own and we control. So that's what I want to say about that.
All right, thank you for that. I want to open the floor for some questions. I see some people have had their hands up for quite a while, and I appreciate your patience. I just wanted to kind of like set the room so we could get some understanding of what we're going to be talking about. And the first person with their hand up, and again, if you have anything you want to say or a question, please put your hand up so I can see you, and I'll get to you as soon as I can. Let's see. Akeem has had his hand up for a while. He's been very patient, so I'm gonna let him have the floor. Wealth Akeem, I'm gonna bring you in as a speaker, brother. What's on your mind?
Peace, everybody. Yeah, I just wanted to say quickly that, Brother Isaac, I was in your Trolls Nation room last night on Fanbase, and it was a good discussion. And if anybody had any, I guess, step backs about, like, do people actually use loves to support creators on the app? I mean, I use it, and I receive a couple of them, on Fanbase myself. And my two questions are: the first one is, like, when Jay-Z brought the Brooklyn Nets when Jay-Z brought the Nets to Brooklyn, and like when Diddy, made his fashion line and then he sold it, like what'll happen once fan base gets popular, amongst the community? And then secondly, how do you suggest, like, artists, monetize their music? Because I do have some content dropping, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to monetize it. So that was all. Thank you.
So we've always been told that businesses are built to be sold. I absolutely agree. You have to be mindful, though, when your business is culture, because you have to be mindful of who you sell your culture to. I always use this example of L.A. Reid, who is probably the most, the greatest record executive of all time, from LaFace Records to Arista Records to Island Def Jam to Epic. And in that journey, I'm going to name who people aren't familiar with LA, but you got to imagine a man that signed TLC, Tony Braxton, Outkast, Usher, Pink, then went on to sign Justin Bieber, Rick Ross, Jeezy, Avril Lavigne, Rihanna, The Dream, Neo, and went on to sign Future, 21 Savage, DJ Khaled. It's Fifth Harmony. It's a whole list. But when he sold the face, he actually should have never sold the label, in my opinion. I tell that all the time. Is like, because at the time the face was Tony Braxton, TLC, Usher, and Outkast. And then they offered LA this job at Arista when he did something that he hadn't done before, which is he signed Pink. And now he stepped into the pop lane. He signed a white artist. And from that moment, they wanted him at Arista, and they subsequently hired him to run Arista, bought LaFace, and then eventually fired him. So again, when I talk about record companies, like the value of a record company is based on the artist. Jive was a rap label, primarily a rap label, until they did four things. They signed Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, and R. Kelly, and then they were the biggest label in the world. So imagine LA never sells. He never sells the face to Arista. He still gets that 8701 album from Usher. He still gets Confessions. He still gets Stankonia. He still gets Speakerbox and The Love Below. He still gets Pink selling 14 million records. He still gets Sierra. He still gets Jeezy, Bieber, Rick Ross, The Dream, Emancipation of Mimi, all of these albums. So you have to be mindful of who you sell your culture to. So I say, with fan base success, the difference is in IPO, which you're seeing right now how these companies are getting wiped out on the stock market from IPO. You got to be careful. But the benefit of ever selling fan base would be the fact that we have like 9,000 investors who are primarily African American. And I would love nothing more than to be standing in a room full of thousands of people and turning them into millionaires through some sort of acquisition from another company that buys fan base. For the record, the largest distribution of wealth was Bob Johnson selling BET. He made more millionaires at that one moment by selling BET than anyone had ever done in the country. And I want to obliterate that someday with an IPO or an exit with fan base by the people that have invested, so that I can be standing in a room with 3, 4, 5, 6,000 millionaires that took a chance and said, "Hey, we can leverage our culture and actually own a piece of technology, and then build it up, and then we can sell it, and then go build another one." Because social media is always going to evolve. So, and for a young artist like you, I just say you have to be intentional about monetizing your art. Like, everybody's not going to subscribe to your content. Don't worry about that. Do you want, if I told you you could have a million followers, and you have, if I told you you have a million followers right now, right? and that's great. And you got a lot of attention and likes and all that kind of stuff, right? Or if I say you have 5,000 subscribers on Fanbase and you're making 1,500 a month, $150,000 a year, which is more than 96% of Americans, which one are you taking? I'm going to take the 5,000 subscribers. I'm going to take the guaranteed. That's just 5,000 people that you can still build on, because now you're able to pay for your art and support yourself and scale that. You could scale that 5,000 to 10,000 or 50,000. Now you're making $1.5 million a year. I know somebody with 13 million TikTok followers that doesn't make $150,000 a year. What good is having 13 million followers on TikTok if it doesn't do anything for you? Except say, hey, you're the guy from TikTok. Cool. I'm about to go back to my apartment. Y'all gonna love me, and I'm gonna try to get these brand deals. And that's the most inefficient thing to do, is to try to build a business off of a follow. Build a business off of a following. You build a business off of a fan base.
I'm actually glad you brought that up, Isaac, because I'm gonna divulge a little bit of information here. You might know it as well. Some of y'all in the chat, some of y'all in the space right now. I'm pretty sure y'all know who Luther Campbell is, Uncle Luke. He wrote a book about 5 years ago called The Book of Loot. He basically talked about how he built Loot Records from like a boutique label from a hole in the wall club in Liberty City in Miami into the biggest black owned record label in the country from in the late 80s up until the mid 90s. And he said something that I'll never forget. He said that a lot of people, he was competing with a lot of labels like Def Jam and like labels out of LA and Rufus and all like that. But all those labels were connected to major labels. So they were selling parts of their label and getting a percentage of their label. Loot was going around the southeast and sometimes on the west coast and in Texas and whatnot. And he was basically selling records out the trunk of his car. He didn't have a big infrastructure, but everything that he made and everything he created, he owned that. So while he was going on tour with people like Run DMC and whatnot, they were pulling in percentages of the creativity that they made, where everything Luke and Two Live and all them made was everything they owned. So if Luke and them sold a Luke record shirt, they were getting 100%, well maybe like 80% of that outside of cost of that shirt, the cost of that shirt. Whereas if you bought a Run DMC shirt, Run DMC was seeing 5% of that. Run DMC had more prestige. They had a bigger fan base. They were pulling in a lot less profits. So who wins out of that? And I think what you're talking about, Isaac, is along some of that same principle. It's kind of like what you saw in like the movie that Eddie Murphy did about Dolomite, where he said basically, there's 5 blocks where people will rock with me in every city. If I focus, y'all right. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I think you know, like, I'll say this. You know, when you think about ownership, and Tyler Perry is probably the example. Is someone that is an independent person that has always licensed his content and never sold it. So I remember Tyler Perry doing his deal at TBS, and then taking that and then going to Lionsgate, and then taking that and then going from Lionsgate to OWN, and then taking it from OWN and now going over to BET Plus and making $150 million a year, and being half of that streaming service, a partner in that streaming service. And then he built the largest movie studio in the country, and it's not financed; it's independently owned by a black man. And so when other people want to make movies, I don't care if you white, black, or whatever, you go around Hollywood and ask people to give you money for your movie. Then they take a good chunk, a piece of it, and then you shoot it on a movie studio lot and pay them to use their equipment, and then you distribute the movie through one of the, through the studio. Tyler Perry goes in his back pocket and writes a check. He then goes on his own lot and films his own movie, and then he puts it out on his streaming service called BET Plus that he owns half of. So owning your culture from inception to distribution, again, is the long game. And so we should be thinking about how we're going to own ourselves. And the fastest way to do that and the most efficient way to do that is through subscription, right? So that's again the energy that I speak about all the time, which is like, look, you know, take your, fan base has 6 verticals. We have posts, which are photos and videos. We have stories. We have live. We have audio rooms like Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse, but they're monetized. So everybody sitting on a stage on fan base has this little heart icon above their head. So how every time Tremaine taps 100 or thumbs up or claps, somebody can tap on that and give me money, give me a few hearts, give me love, right? And you can actually make money from doing that. We also can create rooms that are subscriber based. So imagine doing virtual meet and greets as an artist. Like, yo, okay, I'm gonna come in here and have a cool conversation with my fans for a couple hours, but only the people that subscribe to do that. And if you're a fan, you're gonna pay for that. $4.99 is nothing. A subscription on Fanbase is $4.99 per person. But if you get a chance to talk to, Drake, or get to talk to Young Boy or Post Malone, you gonna pay that $4. It's nothing to be like, man, I got to really talk to Post Malone and have a conversation with him and really, do that. So it's a disruptive. The thing about fan base and what I say is like it's disruptive because it's ownership and then it's democratization of content distribution for every single user on the planet. So I'll go back to Bad Baby. Bad Baby made $42 million on OnlyFans. Guess what? Atlantic Records can't pay her $42 million a year. So when her record deal is up with Atlantic Records, she can be like, I want 95% of the profit and y'all get 5%. Or I'll just go do a deal somewhere else. And guess what Atlantic Records is going to say? Deal done. Because she has all the leverage. I don't need your money. I'm making $42 million a year. That's the same with NIL and athletes. Like, I had this conversation today. It's like, people's idea of NIL is, ooh, I'm a college kid. I can go get money. I can get an endorsement and go get a commercial. No, fam, you can have subscribers. You can be showcasing your talent as a high school player or college player. By the time you get to the pros, what happens if you have 2 million subscribers and then some company tries to do an endorsement deal with you and you're like, fam, I'm making like 5 million a month off my fan base page. I need a better deal than that. I'm making like 50 million a year off fan base. So no, you gonna have to up these contracts. You have to up this because I don't need the money. I already got the money. So it's the destabilization of these systems that dictate the value of what you create. And now you set the value by how big you can scale your business through subscriptions and fans.
All right. Um, I want to go into another conversation tied into what you just said, and this is going to make people uncomfortable, but we got to have it. Um, Everything you said is valid. And everything you said, the way you laid this out, is really logical. But we got to deal with a psychological issue that a lot of us have if we're talking about black creators and black people who are making content. I hope I'm not. I hope in the background isn't too loud. It seems like people are coming in here, so if you can hear me, or if you can't, just raise your hand and I'll try to move to another space.
We
But
can hear you.
all right, cool. My question is this: there's a thing that happens in black culture where we feel like things that are created by people outside of our culture have more value than the things that we create, and that's just a universal truth. I wish it wasn't, but it is, and we got to deal with that. How can we deal? How can we get black consumers over the idea that the things that we create you and they're worth just as much as going into Gucci or going into these European shops, going into these people who are outside of the culture and monetizing the way we on the things that we create.
What you're what you're talking about is two things that I call the velvet rope syndrome and the minority existence, right? So what that means is, and I don't think it's just black people. So first of all, I'll say this. There's something that I call familiarity bias, which means you're more likely to be supported by people that don't know you than people that know you. I don't care what race you are. That's just what it is. It's like your high school friends are not going to your business before a stranger does. It's just biased. It's like your high school friends will be like, "Hey man, you should give me that for free." No, man, I'm running a business here. Like, you should give me the discount because I'm your
Man,
homeboy.
look,
Like,
bro,
that
look.
doesn't that doesn't matter. I don't think that has to do with color. I think that happens to every single person. When it comes to black culture, though, the minority existence is when you grow up in a country understanding that white supremacy runs everything, and then your way through success is some sort of allyship or alignment or breaking through these oppressive barriers that hold you back, right? And it's totally fine to partner and do business in that same way, right? It's totally fine to do that. I mean, partnerships are fine. There's ships and there's a lot of great business deals that Drake and Rihanna and Beyonce and Jay-Z and all these people have done. LeBron have done in allyship. When I talk about Tyler, though, It's something that he's done independent of those people, and it makes him a lot more powerful because there's no exploitive relationship that exists between Tyler Perry and anybody else. And then the velvet rope mentality is the fact that it's actually better for business to disrespect black people, right? And what that means is that the more that you don't, when you tell people that you don't want them there, the harder that they fight to get in. Tell black people that you don't want them shopping in Gucci, they're gonna spend more Gucci. Like, I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna buy the whole store. As opposed to saying, let me find this 19-year-old, 20-year-old kid that is making clothes that'll blow Gucci out the water and wear his stuff and then invest in him and turn him into the next Virgil, right?
I put
Turn
the
him into the next
I just
mainstream person.
I just put something up in the on the jumbotron. This is something that a friend of mine, Dr. Trayvon Logan, put up. It was a study done by Ebony Magazine in 1954 called "How to Sell to the Negro,"
Oh
and just
yeah,
watch it. Yeah, just watch it, and you'll see it's actually scary how a lot of this stuff from
it's
1954 is
still
still
true.
valid. It's scary as
Exactly.
hell,
No, the
and it kind of
part
reminds. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, the part you're talking about the most is that selling to the Negro, like it says that black people value name brands, right? Because they've never had the opportunity to really have the finer things. So they don't want anything that's shabby. They want the best. They want really high quality items. And that's what we tend to do. But again, we're making, um, all these companies multi-million dollar companies. Now I'll give you a prime example of a way that Jay-Z avoided familiarity bias. I'm gonna tell you how he did it. And it was brilliant. And this is what I think was brilliant that Jay-Z did. I guarantee you, I know for a fact that I'm not gonna name names, but there were several people in the hip hop community that were buying Ace of Spade by the truckload and had no idea that Jay-Z owned it. Had no clue.
Mm.
People didn't know that Jay-Z owned Ace of Spade probably till he just sold it a couple of years ago. Some people didn't know, but back in like, you know, 2008, when he's like, we off that Chris, we on that Ace of Spade, that's influence. That's not spokesmanship. If he would have told everybody he owned Ace of Spade, he would have suffered from familiarity bias. Like, I'm not buying Jay-Z champagne. I'm not putting money in his pocket. He just made it the cool thing to drink. And everybody had gold bottles lined up in their studios and in their bars and in their houses like, well, yo, we on that Ace of Spade. And so that's how kind of you avoid that bias. I think it was a genius way that he avoided that bias. Now, now that we know that we spend $1 trillion, we're a $1 trillion economy, but we circulate that money through other people. We have to be intentional about what we support. We have to direct our dollars to places that do that. A quick story is there are these young guys out of Chicago called the Black Bread Company. If you've never heard of them, they're called the Black Bread Company, and they're the only black-owned bread company in your grocery aisle. And so I introduced them to the same platform, Start Engine, and got them a meeting with Start Engine, like referred them, and they got accepted, and they raised their $1 million, right? And so now, as like I invested in it too, I got them on Start Engine and invested to them. So now, like, why would I buy anything other than their bread? It's bread. I'm funny, but like, bread. I mean, I get it. There can be different quality bread, but bread is bread. But if you could buy a bread from a black-owned three guys from Chicago that have a black-owned bread company, and you're gonna make your sandwiches, and you're gonna make your subs, and you're gonna why not buy it from them? Right? And so we just have to be intentional where we direct our dollars. Like that's exactly kind of like I'm intentional about where I spend my money in ways and who I spend my money with intentionally. Like I love supporting Slutty Vegan. I love, being a member of the Gathering Spot, not Soho House here in Atlanta. Like I like my doctors, like my doctor cardiologist is black. My dentist is black. Like, I think that that's important that we just intentionally direct our money in our community so that we can help build that up. One of the things that to be to understand why it is the way that we are is we don't have the benefit of our own language. We were stripped from our language when we got to the United States of America through slavery, right? But when you think about it, if you're Mexican, if you're Korean, right, or If you're Arabic, then you got to build a Korean grocery store, a Korean bank, a Korean doctor's office, a Korean school, Korean dry cleaners, because that's the only way you can communicate. So that's how the money stays in the community. If you only speak Spanish, you have Spanish taxis, Spanish restaurants, Spanish grocery stores, Spanish daycares, right? You have to have all of these places that speak a language. So language is an extremely important way to keep that economy there. Now that we speak English, we're at the bottom of the totem pole through distributing our wealth because white people speak English. So black
And
people
here's the
speak English
and
too.
just so people who don't live in Atlanta, and Isaac can tell you this. Once you go past Lindbergh in Atlanta and you go up Buford Highway, there's whole infrastructures of people who are from Southeast Asia, from Mexico and Latin America, where nobody speaks English, and there's a whole infrastructure of businesses that all trade with each other. So you're right.
Oh yeah, there's businesses that are like that. Yeah, like I see the taxis go up and down Buford Highway that they can communicate. Like they got their own Uber. They got the Mexican Uber. Like that's it. That's what we spending our money with, and that's how it's done. So now that we're indoctrinated into the English language, um, which the circumstances we had no control over, we have to be mindful now. We have to think, all right, I have to intentionally go spend my money there. And what we can't do is we can't we can't be critical, and we're more critical of ourselves than we are of strangers. Meaning, I've had more people say, "Oh man, fan base is cool, but like this button doesn't do what it's supposed to." I'm like, "Yo, you will sit on Twitter about to crash, and y'all still here. This thing could go down tomorrow. This is how crazy it could be. Twitter could stop working tomorrow, and people would not go anywhere else, and still wait and hope that Twitter would come back, rather than like, yo, we just all with the fan base. Isaac could go raise $200 million and build us whatever the hell we wanted to, and then problem solved. With
Basically, you're saying
efficiency or whatever. So you have to
basically
be
you're saying
intentional about the way you spend your dollars.
basically you're saying somebody could sit in the house with the lights off instead of going and finding a candle or a flashlight.
Yeah, hoping sitting in the house with the lights off, hoping that they turn back on. Like, don't even know if they coming back on. Like, please turn. Maybe they'll come back on. Like, instead of just saying, "Look, man, I'm finna go out here and start a fire and get some heat and get some light and build my own." And that's what we have to do. I took a photo of myself and I put to um, Evan Spiegel, Jack Dorsey, Kevin Systrom, and Mark Zuckerberg. And the reason why I did that is because I wanted to normalize the visualization that a black man could be a founder of a social media platform and be just as successful as these men. You have to see it. You have to put that idea in someone's mind that they can do it before you even attempt to do it. Like you have to normalize that. Like, yo, okay, if these guys, and what you're realizing when I say this all the time, and this is no shade to any of those guys, right? This is no shade to any of those guys, but when I saw that Clubhouse was trying to do subscriptions and Elon's trying to do subscriptions and Instagram's trying to do subscriptions, that just lets me know that nobody has the answers. They're just pulling ideas from where they can pull ideas from. Nobody knows. You know what I'm saying? We're all out here just trying. The benefit is they have the luxury or the privilege of going to raise 5 million, 50 million, 100 million, $1 billion. Like old boy from FTX. I was just saying today, how did buddy from FTX
Yeah.
raise $1 billion? He by January he had raised a total of $1 billion and he filed for bankruptcy 5 months ago. How the math ain't mathing. You raised $1 billion? It's like 1 something billion. It might be 2 billion, and it's like the
Out
money's
of
gone. I know
out of
black
nowhere.
founders.
Out of
I
nowhere. I
know
don't know who the hell this dude is.
I don't know black founders that can get 50,000, 100,000, $500,000 to start their apps. That's why I went to crowdfunding because I look at I come from the music business, so I have no perspective of how Silicon Valley works, but I know how the music business works. So I look at a VC, I'm like, oh, the VCs are like the labels, and fan base is like the artist. If I come in here with no momentum, no buzz, no traction, they're gonna give me the standard record deal, take 50% of my publishing, 50% of my royalties. I'm gonna be signing this long ass deal, and I'm gonna hate it. For me, I went independent. So I sold shares out the trunk of my car to the tune of $7 million. So the VCs are looking at me like, man, we can't give him that deal because He went to the streets and got his bread from the streets. And now fan base is starting to buzz. So it's just like being an artist that's buzzing. So if fan base blows up, it's gonna be a bidding war. It's gonna be like, yo, okay, how much you want? Because you're out of here now. Now you moving and you did it without us. You did it without our permission. You did it without us, taking advantage of you. So now you tell us how much you want, and we'll cut you the check for that, and then you're able to go ahead and build your company the way that you want to build it. And that's the way that I look. I don't know any other way. I came into this with no perspective or no knowledge, but I think that gives me an advantage. If you know the rules to the game, then you try to play the game by the rules. If you don't know the rules, you just bend the rules. You don't break them. You just say, all right, I'm gonna play it a different way. I'm gonna dunk the ball. I'm not gonna lay it up. That's how you innovate spaces. And so I just look at it as like, I have no perspective of how, venture capital works. I just know that if there's enough value to something that you build, then people will want to invest in it and not be left out of, mega unicorn social media platforms. So that's how I look at what we're doing over at Fanbase.
All right, I want to open it up for some questions. I see some people had their hands up. Um, Again, if you have a question for the panel and you have something you want to say, please go to your mic, tap that, or go to the heart button and tap your hand so I can see you and I'll bring you in. I think there's like 3 or 4 people waiting, but I can't see you right away. So shoot me a request, put your hand up, and we'll open it up for the panel. Um, while we're waiting for people to have their hands up, I see there's something else I want to ask about, and I want to open this up for Chuck too. Can we talk a little bit about some of the narratives that are prevalent in mainstream media spaces and how like some of the conversations that happen on social media are able to push back against a lot of those narratives? I know Chuck, you saw that in I don't know Baltimore,
I
but
was.
the first time I saw that was when I'm blanking on the brother's name. We basically told Geraldo basically to get out of the city because he told him you weren't there to talk about what was really going on. You were here for riots and fires and
Yeah.
stuff. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly right. It might have been Kwame.
Kwame, it was Kwame.
Yeah, it's Kwame. That's what media is there for. When they go into a situation like the Baltimore uprising or like Ferguson, they're there for ratings, but the ratings are to criminalize the black protesters. Because I'm a big sports nut, right? So I follow sports, and when Kentucky wins the championship or loses the championship, and 3 times in 5 years, the white, predominantly white college students are tearing up the campus with 60 fires. It's a one-day story. So what we learn real quickly when it comes to media, it's not that the media cares about property damage or cares about fires. They care about who's lighting the match. That's what they care about. So the double standard is so clear, and we're just talking about a game right now, right? So now we're talking about serious things like a Freddie Gray being murdered in the back of the van, and so when you look at that, and when you see what Geraldo is trying to do, and Geraldo is this controversial figure, but we have to understand also that, and I think everybody does understand here, that Geraldo's sort of the norm. And even if someone is not as outlandish as Geraldo, that's what these corporate networks are doing. That's what they're trying to leverage profit off of criminalizing the black protester. So, you could only hope you get some nuggets in there. But what sometimes happens is the corporate media gives a segue, and then what happens is now it's up to other voices and independent media and local media and black media to reroute the discussion to where it needs to be, and that's always the challenge.
And that's why I wanted to have you on this panel because a lot that we're seeing and a lot of the rerouting that as you term it in mainstream media is coming directly from Black Twitter or Twitter in general or just people who are on social media who are basically locked out of mainstream media, but there's enough of a voice to move the narrative away from what basically are media people who are being stenographers for the police unions to tell real stories. And you're seeing a little bit more of that. And my fear is depending on what happens with Twitter and also to a smaller extent, places like TikTok, where you also see some of the same things, that the narrative is going to fall back on this, basically this received, understood wisdom that the only people who can tell the story are people who are sitting behind a news desk.
Yeah, I'm definitely concerned about that, and I like the language you used. You said police stenographers, because that's what they're doing. We know objectively that police lie all the time. This is proven. We know after George Floyd happened, they said he died from medical injuries, and that's the norm. And if that's the norm, and you know the person in front of you is lying, why would you possibly take their statement and repeat it at state value, which is a standard journalistic practice? So if I repeat a liar as part of standard journalistic practice, I am engaging in journalistic malpractice, and that's the standard. So we have just an incredible institutional problem across corporate media, and we have to find ways. And if Twitter goes down, you will lose one of those avenues, and we have to somehow replace that with other avenues. And the last thing I want to say to that, what made Twitter really, really good is that it became collective, right? It became so many people were banding together to put the real story out there. And that's going to be the difficulty of the loss of Twitter. How do we replace that collective action?
All right. Um, I can't catch everybody who's got their hand up, and so I'm going to just keep going with the panel until I actually see somebody pop up. Um, Isaac, I want to ask you, how can we move from, and I asked you this earlier, but I want to go a little bit more in depth into this. How can we move from a consumerist, uh, free game standpoint, which is what black media has done in social media, into a space where we see the value in the things that we create ourselves, and then we're able to build some sort of infrastructure to monetize on that?
I mean, it's going to take time. I think it's time and opportunity. Success is when opportunity meets preparation. I just seen, like I said, it's very eerie that TikTok might get banned in the U.S. Um, the metaverse might go miserably. Clubhouse will probably go under, and you know, Twitter just disappears. So there'll be a vacuum. It just takes time. And there's plenty of room in the social media universe for other platforms. I mean, when you think about Discord and Roblox and all these other platforms that we probably don't know about, or, Be Real. I mean, there's still some very, um, dope, emerging and already established platforms that are out there. I think we just have to not be so fixed in staying in one place, and use all. Like I said, this don't ever leave your social media. Don't leave Twitter. I don't care what Twitter becomes. Don't leave. Hold on to your following. Hold on to your Instagram following, your Snapchat, your TikTok. Right? You've earned those followers. You've earned that following. So don't ever leave that following behind. Don't ever do that. You've earned it. So we just have to be intentional. But you got to try new things. Um, that's probably one of the most important things. Like, you got to try new things. Try new platforms, because you know you don't know the relationship that might happen, that might change your life. Um, I can scream till the cows go home to tell everybody to get on fan base or invest in fan base, but it's going to take some time. This is another thing too, for people that are in tech or want to build businesses. It's Don't get caught up by the exception. Always understand the rule. The rule is that platforms take 10, 12 years to develop. Instagram is the exception. Clubhouse is the exception. The rule is the first year that Twitter existed, I think they had 40 users the whole year. Like, the first year that Twitter's out, they had 40, 65 users on the platform the first whole year. That, nobody, but it takes time, and you have to be consistent. And so don't give up if you don't have immediate success. I think Fanbase at one point had 10,000 users, and now we have 300,000 users. And when we eventually will have 3 million, and then 30 million, and then 300 million. And then it's like, oh, okay. And it'll look like an overnight success, but it's not, because there'll be people that knew about it forever. When I look at Patreon was founded in 2013. There's people who still don't know what Patreon is. Been around for 10 years. Company's worth $4 billion. Successful company, right? ByteDance, which is TikTok's parent company, was founded in 2012, right? So they've been around 10 years. So it takes time. So, we also just have to remember that it takes time for these platforms to develop. And then when they do, try them out, try something new. You know what I'm saying? And that's my suggestion.
All right. It's 8:26 where I am. I'm going to wind it down at about 8:30. So what I want to do is um, I'm going to let the panel have some final thoughts if they have anything they want to say. Chuck, what are your thoughts about the future of social media and media in social media?
Oh yeah. So it's a good question, and I think we'll get a lot of the answers in when we see what happens. There's going to be an emergence of other social media platforms. There's no question. People are scrambling right now, and talking about the revenue that could be generated. So you're probably every other outlet or platform that could replicate some of Twitter. They're all having meetings round the clock right now of how they can move forward. And I don't know who will get a lot of it. I imagine right now it will split, it'll splinter. I'm deciding myself. I'm on IG. I'm deciding where else to go. And I think a lot of people are deciding that and don't know that. But because Twitter was so, I'm saying was, it's not dead yet, but is so huge. So it's going to splinter, but you're going to see those other places build their capacity over time. And it was said, many things start small. I just learned 5 seconds ago that Twitter had, 40 people the first year. So it's hard to say where it will go. We don't know. But what I do think is important is that we don't leave. We don't leave the social media space. We don't give up. Take a break. I mean, I need to take a break. If I take 2 weeks off, I'm a healthier person, and everybody could take a break. But we want to keep that energy and find out where we can move that energy forward. So it remains to be seen.